was coming.
Okay, Greta, let's jump to the screenwriter, and I'll lay it out quickly. A lot of the embeds have talked to us about it. Up to the north, you heard about the airborne drop up here around Suleimania at the air base airport just 10 miles west. The big battle, of course, is shaping up right here down around Najaf, and the key thing is it's the culmination phase. Everything we're doing here is going to shape up there, which we'll probably discuss a little bit. And then finally down around Basra, yesterday the 1st Armored Division, the 7th Armored Brigade, the Red Devils, went in there, and that's very important. I have a couple assets I want to talk to you about. You talked about the B-2, and this manifests itself in the precision strike throughout this whole area that is going on right now, but they're Navy airplanes, Air Force airplanes, etc. Very important to the success of this campaign. And then, of course, this Joint STARS, this Joint Strategic Surveillance Targeting and Attack Radar System, which maps anything moving on the ground or anything static, that's part of our intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets that gives a picture to the people on the ground as well as to the people in the air. Quickly, I think the significant thing going on in Basra is there's a convoy of 120 vehicles trying to get out of Basra, which is very significant because I think today, as daylight comes up, we'll see how many people are going to stay there to defend Basra. That's very important. It may be that they're starting to leak out right now, and that'll be the model in the final analysis for Baghdad. We'll learn a lot there. As I said, the big battle shaping up is right here at Najaf and the Karbala Gap here. The Marines are coming up over here at El Kut, and the defenses are the Hammurabi Division, excuse me, the Medina Division with the Baghdad Division just to the east of it, and Hammurabi is sitting back up here. So those divisions, we are in the process of destroying them or taking them down to about 50 to 60% before the ground action transpires. And that will be done it was done yesterday and over the next 48 hours. And then I think you're going to see the culmination phase, the great battle for Baghdad.
All right, General, thanks. General Scales, you're an Army man. Let's talk about these ground troops. It seems to me that the Republican Guard is now coming out of the Baghdad area. They're leaving the sanctity or the safety of the city. Does that make it easier for our guys on the ground?
Greta, that's what you want to happen. You may remember in 1991 the famous Battle of Khafji, where the Iraqi 13th Corps decided to line up their vehicles just north of the Saudi border and attempt to conduct a Corps-sized raid into Saudi Arabia, and they were massacred. You know, the Iraqis are most vulnerable when they mass and when they mass in the open, because that's where our strength comes to play.
Why would they do that? Didn't they learn it first time around? I mean, it seems like if they're moving, and I mean, I realize that, you know, we're getting so much information, and I even know that JSTARS can pick up virtually anything moving, but we think it's about 1,000 Republican guards leaving back.
I think there are a couple of reasons. Number one is I honestly believe that they thought that sandstorm that was coming in somehow would mask them from Allied air power. Totally erroneous. As Tom said, you have JSTARS that can track them. Secondly, obviously they were sent down that road almost as a sort of sacrificial unit by someone in Baghdad. Remember what they're trying to do here. They'll sacrifice their soldiers to buy time. If it's 1,000 vehicles and 3,000 soldiers, that's fine if that buys them a couple of days. The regime wants to hang on for as long as they can, and if it means sacrificing the Republican Guard to do it, they'll be perfectly happy to oblige.
Captain, your thoughts on it? I mean, it seems, I'm surprised that the Republican Guard at least is coming down to meet our infantry division.
It sounds to me like General Scales has his thumb right on it, and that is they're trying to buy time, and they have seen our television, they have their own intelligence, and they see this massive sweep out to the southwest, and this battle, these battles going up with the Marines and the Brits as they come up the northeastern side of the Tigris, and they probably thought there was a vulnerability there if they could punch down and interdict those supply lines in some significant way.
It's hard for me to think that, because if I were in the Republican Guard, I'd worry that I'd run into someone like you. I mean, you used to fly fighter planes, and the minute the sandstorm stops, the minute we're outside Baghdad and we don't have the protection of the city, all of a sudden you show up in one of your fighter planes, and then I've got a big problem.
You're right, and they have grossly miscalculated once again. Those vehicles are lost right now. They are living on borrowed time, and speaking of time, it's interesting to hear your previous guests and everyone talking about time and how this may take longer than we thought. You know, it may be 3 weeks longer. Oh, so it'll be a 1-month war. You know, we have a sandstorm for 2 days, and all of a sudden the gloom and doom surfaces again. This operation is 1 week and 45 minutes into its existence, and so far I think the progress has been pretty remarkable. I'm willing to bet right now those 1,000 vehicles, they're toast.
And in terms of the progress, I mean, it's been extraordinary, and the weather has not been on our side only for a small period of time, 24 hours. But this battle for Baghdad, I mean, that's not an insignificant. I mean, we're all sort of sitting waiting for that one.
That's the main show.
That's the main show.
That's the main show.
And
quite frankly, that's why we took the calculated move, and I won't call it risk, although there's some risk to it, but we took that calculated decision early on to sweep those forces up the flank, up the outside, to get to Baghdad and not crawl through the fighting of the Mesopotamia, but to sweep up, because what's going to determine when this thing is over is when Baghdad falls, and when that occurs, the sooner that happens, the less casualties there will be on both sides. And it was a bold and it was a daring move, and I think that when we look back on this, everybody's going to be glad that we did it.
General Scales, so what's left in Baghdad, do you think? I mean, it seems to me that Saddam's not that stupid that he's going to send everybody out of Baghdad.
Well, no, he's not going to do that. I mean, he's in Baghdad. You know, there's an expression in the military we use called center of gravity and culminating point. Center of gravity is that point that if you strike it with a single blow, the rest of the defense will fall apart like a house of cards. Culminating point is the high point of the battle. That's the point at which you decide the whole issue. And you have both of those nesting in Baghdad. You've got Saddam hiding away in Baghdad with all of his leadership.
In a deep bunker, no doubt.
In some 100-foot deep bunker.
That he's been building for 12 years.
Right. He's surrounded by all that thuggery. But the thing that's going to make the difference are those Republican Guard units. When you break those and they start streaming into Baghdad with nothing on but their boots, that's when this battle's going to culminate.
All right, gentlemen, stand by for a moment. It's time to find out what's coming up in the next hour. And for that, we go to the one and only Shepard Smith in New York. Shep.
Greta, thank you. There are lots of breaking details coming tonight. The troops are certainly now in the north. Paratroopers, more than 1,000 of them. Think of that number of people parachuting in to form the northern front. Additionally, there is news tonight for the first time, absolutely confirmed from the highest places, that in fact the Iraqis are executing our prisoners of war, our American troops, executed by the Iraqis. We'll talk about the source on that and where it's coming from. Additionally, we'll talk about how this war is going to date, the number of strikes in Baghdad today. We'll speak in depth with our correspondent Rick Leventhal, who's live in the desert. We'll go to Brett Baer for breaking details at the Pentagon, and we'll try to make sense of this. From the front page, as was discussed a moment ago on your program, Greta, from the online edition of the Washington Post, from a respected reporter named Tom Ricks, this war could last months. Tonight, we'll talk about his reasons for that, what may have gone wrong, what may have gone right, and sort it all out for you on late-night coverage for the East Coast, prime time on the West. That's coming up just 11 minutes from now. Greta, see you then.
All right, Shep, you know I'll be watching. All right, we're going to go to the USS Constellation, where Kevin Monahan is standing by. Kevin, what's going on in Constellation?
Hi, Greta. Well, the sun has just come up here. It's been a very, very long night of flight operations again. The weather was a problem yet again tonight, but not nearly as bad as yesterday. High wind, some driving rain. They continue to fly through the night here. They're still flying now. Some of the targets that they've been going after APCs, armored personnel carriers, and tanks in the south of Baghdad area. They've also been going after air defenses and Special Republican Guard units in Baghdad. 24 hours ago, they were pretty happy that they said they got a high-value target, command and control target in Baghdad. So they are still flying quite a bit here, although the weather hasn't been working for them. They've been doing pretty well. Now, as an example of how the air war is evolving, Greta, the new weapon that I've been hearing a lot of, it's not a new weapon, but the weapon I've been hearing a lot of the last couple of days are JSOWs, which are standoff weapons. What they're doing is a lot of the pilots are getting up in the air and they're dropping these JSOWs, which are GPS-guided, sophisticated weapons. But what they can do is they can communicate with people on the ground. People can give them coordinates, ground troops specifically, and they can launch these missiles from about 20 miles plus away, and through the GPS system, hit their targets, hit their coordinates. It helps them in a couple ways. It helps them because they can stay above and out of the fray and out of danger, of course. But the other thing is, it's very good. Yesterday, Greta, you were talking about the fact that laser-guided missiles don't work very well in this weather for obvious reasons. In this case, the GPS-guided missiles, especially the JSOWs, are pretty effective because all they need is a coordinate on the ground for them to hit it. So, Greta, what I find most interesting about this is the crews, the pilots are being asked to be quicker. They're asked to respond more, as opposed to being asked to hit fixed targets, which they still need to hit. They're being asked by troops on the ground. When they need help, they call up. They're able to get off the carrier and hit them with these JSOWs. And so far, it's been pretty effective, Greta.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much for joining us from the Constellation aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. And I might add that whooshing noise, Captain Nash just told me, was a plane trapping on the deck of the Constellation. Tonight, there's word out of Iraq that a new breed of Iraqi guerrillas may push the Pentagon to change its strategy. Joining us is national security reporter Bill Gertz of the Washington Times. Bill, the Fedayeen, they're giving us more trouble than we anticipated, aren't they?
That's their objective. They are trying to distract the advancing forces and make them look backward instead of in downtown Baghdad. And the estimates are that there are anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000, up to as many as 30,000 of these Fedayeen Saddam, which could also include some of the Special Republican Guard forces as well.
Who are they, Bill? I mean, where did Saddam find this corps of fighters?
Well, you know, the Pentagon had a real hard time today. The military was describing them as irregulars, and Victoria Clark, the spokeswoman, was calling them thugs. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in between. In fact, the intelligence reports of the Battle of Najaf also referred to them as technicals, which is a term we haven't heard since Somalia, when bands of guerrillas were running around in pickup trucks with machine guns. So that kind of gives you a flavor of the type of activity. These are hardened Islamic Saddam loyalists who are out to not only go after the coalition forces, but also the Iraqi population, or any part of the Iraqi population, or the Iraqi troops that they regard as disloyal.
All right, Bill, your day job at the Washington Times, you got a story tomorrow, a tragic story that you're going to be breaking, be hitting the streets in the Washington Times very soon. Can you tell us what it is tonight? Sure.
Yeah, it is a tragic story. Our reporter, Joe Edens, is embedded with a Marine unit, and he came across a scene where two Marines were ordered to cross the Saddam Canal, which is parallel to the Euphrates River, and in full equipment and with their rifles, and they got swept under and lost. They're now considered missing and presumed drowned, and they're having a big search to try and find them. And I assume that so far, I mean, the names have been kept. There's been no notification or anything, right? Yes. No, they've released the names. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'll still let the family still keep that one quiet. Somebody else can talk about it, not me. Bill, thank you. Thank you. Let's bring back in retired Air Force Lieutenant General Tom McInerney, retired Navy Captain Chuck Nash, and retired Army Major General Bob Scales. Welcome back to the General McInerney. In terms of the Northern Front, we have paratroopers that have jumped in, but how long before we can get a lot of boots on the ground there to really help the military that's coming up from the south?
Well, it's going to take a little bit of time, Greta, but let's take a look. The Northern Front is going to be much like Afghanistan, with Special Operations Forces and light infantry. And we learned a lot from that. But up here, where this area is, that is not going to be the real key point. The real key point and the culmination of battle, or the center of gravity, is right here. The Northern Alliance is primarily for gaining control of Mosul and Kirkuk, stabilizing it, make sure we don't have a problem with the Kurds and the Turks. This is the battle, though, down here at Baghdad. Medina and Baghdad divisions, those are the key divisions. As I said, in the next 36 to 48 hours, we have to destroy them. And then I'll tell you, all the other writers, Tom Ricks and everybody else, that are hunting for a good story, the story's going to be over.
Well, I guess we'll figure out that when we get to that point. General Scales, any sign to you that that the Iraqi military is well organized to suggest that Saddam or somebody else still has command and control? Is there any sign of chaos,
No.
or is there order?
It's one of these stories where there's obviously a score, but there's no conductor and there's no orchestra.
What makes you say that?
Well, because none of this is coordinated. It's all going off at different times. For instance, there's no concentrated attack by artillery and mortars. It's 2 rounds here, 3 rounds there. There are no formations attacking. It's just someone sends a column out on a road and says go south. There's no evidence of any attempt, even among the guerrillas, to coordinate what they do to achieve maximum effect. And that's why so many of them are dying, because there's no combined arms, there's no effort at control, there's no effort to put any type of rigor in what they're doing. And when that happens, if you're in an armored formation and these Fedayeen attack, then you got the opportunity to take them out one by one. If this were an orchestrated defense, it would look a lot different. Now, that's not to say that the defense by the Republican Guard will be disorganized. I suspect we're going to see a heck of a lot more coherence in that defense than we've seen so far.
You shake your head yes, Captain Nash.
And that's because they're more closely aligned. They're in tight around Baghdad.
But someone's still got to run them.
Somebody still has to run them.
Someone's got to be in charge.
But the fact is that if you're taking fire over here and the people right next to you, they're literally within earshot, and it's a lot easier to coordinate when everybody's together. What we're seeing down south are these disparate groups that are spread around. They have not launched one aircraft to
Which is
date.
interesting.
If this was coordinated,
in fact, let me ask you that about General McInerney. You're talking about aircraft. You've been up in those planes. It is extraordinary. They haven't fought back at any of our planes, it seems like.
The Air Force copped out, and they want to be part of the new democratic Iraq. And I'm not laughing. They literally did. And the reason is they knew if they took off, they were going to die. Now, the Fedayeen Saddam, they are really thugs, terrorists, and they're, as Bob Scales said, Greta, they're going to be cannon fodder because they're committing them piecemeal, and what they're trying to do is protract this. Now, we have the time schedule. And I do believe they're ahead of schedule, but the president likes to lower expectations, and I think that's very important. But clearly, this is coming up, and this culmination phase is going to come very quickly.
All right, and with that, we got 10 seconds left. Captain Nash, you heard the plane land on the Constellation. Jealous? Wish you were there all the time?
you betcha.
I figured all you guys always say that. Well, serious times, I shouldn't be laughing, but serious times, big job. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And a special thanks, of course, to our troops overseas and also to their families who are here at home. And you keep your TV locked on Fox News Channel for late-breaking updates on Operation Iraqi Freedom. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night. But don't go away. Shepard Smith is here, and he's next.
You are looking live. The Pentagon, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying Iraq has executed prisoners of war. Tonight, the Iraqi war crimes, how to deal with them, and what the future may hold. You are looking live. Baghdad, the Iraqi capital, struck again. New explosions and anti-aircraft fire heard this evening. More explosions in the north. America's 3rd Infantry now said to be less than 50 miles from the city. This as Central Command says it sees Iraqi Republican Guard units repositioning. possibly getting ready for the Battle of Baghdad. Convoys of humanitarian aid barrel into Qasr. Iraqi citizens cheering and swarming the troops as they hand out much-needed food and water. Britain's Prime Minister arrives in the United States, Tony Blair, to meet with President Bush in a war council on Operation Iraqi Freedom. All the latest and in-depth analysis on a special edition of Fox News right now. It's 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 11 p.m. on the East Coast, 7 a.m. in Baghdad. I'm Shepard Smith in New York. This is Fox News live coverage of America at war. Nobody ever said this thing would be fast. In fact, they've been using words lately, the president saying we're closer to the beginning than the end. We've heard a lot about the word 1 month. Tonight on the front page of WashingtonPost.com from a respected journalist named Thomas Ricks, the following. Despite the rapid advance of Army and Marine forces across Iraq over the past week, some senior U.S. military officers are now convinced, mind you, that war is likely to last months and will require considerably more combat power than is now on hand there and in Kuwait. That from senior defense officials today. From the cover of the WashingtonPost.com, we'll discuss it in depth with our Pentagon correspondent. We'll go live to the Iraqi desert with our correspondent Rick Leventhal, who's been in the middle of it all, and he'll take your questions to Fox Report at foxnews.com. But let's get it started with the worst news imaginable. For the first time, it is now confirmed the Iraqis are executing captured coalition forces. This from the Pentagon's #2 general, saying tonight that the Iraqis have executed U.S. prisoners of war. This on a night when U.S. paratroopers drop into Kurdish territory, proceeding on foot, 1,000 paratroopers dropping from the sky, the most in decades. The northern option is now available. The northern front is now open. We have Team Fox coverage of the war in Iraq. Jonathan Hunt live in Kuwait City. Greg Palcott live in Amman, Jordan. Wendell Goler live at the White House. But kicking off our West Coast prime time tonight, Brett Baer live at the Pentagon. Brett?
Shep, let's start with the Northern Front tonight. Open in full force, 1,000 paratroopers from the 173rd Airborne Division based in Vicenza, Italy, jumped into northern Iraq tonight. They jumped in and secured an airfield. Right now, it's what they call a jump and carry operation, but they will be bringing in heavy vehicles soon. Now, this is the first regular Army unit in the north, adding to the Special Forces teams that have been there working with Kurdish rebels. Meantime, ground reports indicate significant Iraqi Republican Guard forces are on the move, repositioning, preparing for battles to come. This is some video of Iraqi forces in the south. And while there are expected battles to come with significant divisions of the Iraqi Republican Guard, so far most of the attacks have been guerrilla-type attacks from these irregular troops, the Fedayeen Saddam.
I don't know what the best description of that force is. Almost like a state secret police. In a way, they're enforcers. They do not follow the laws of armed conflict. In fact, they violate most of them. As you may recall, there were some found inside a hospital. That was their headquarters. They don't wear uniforms. They've used surrender flags to try to trick people into thinking they're surrendering, then ambush them. So they are there to enforce regime control over the people in those places where they are, and basically with a gun in their back to keep them loyal to the regime. And they're being dealt with as we find them.
Now, coalition forces are now carefully covering their supply and communication lines, going building to building in the south, searching for those Iraqi fighters, the Fedayeen, who have been sporadically attacking, finding weapons caches along the way. At one point today, children led troops into a primary school filled with weapons and grenades. You know, we've been talking about it. Pentagon officials said it today. Some Iraqi forces are now dressing in U.S. uniforms to commit acts against their own people and to possibly attack U.S. forces, and now evidence from the battlefield.
In a bunker that had been abandoned by some of the Fedayeen, they found uniforms, actual uniforms of the 3rd Infantry Division. They actually had markings and they had American name tags on the uniforms. Some cause for concern. Security here very tight.
The official numbers now, as far as the U.S. is concerned, 25 dead, 9 missing, 7 prisoners of war. On the British side, 20 dead and 2 missing at this hour. Shep?
Brett, I guess from seeing the videotape or hearing of it, we had an idea of this report tonight of executed prisoners, but when you hear the number 2 guy say it, it certainly is sobering.
Yeah, General Peter Pace saying tonight that he believes and has come to the conclusion that Iraqi troops executed some of those prisoners of war from that very first incident that we talked about. The supply convoy took a wrong turn, was encountered by some of those Iraqi forces. There are reports, and Pentagon officials say they are reports that are credible, that those forces, once they got out of their vehicles, were executed in public. Some of them were then executed, we're told, in the morgues that they were seen on that video shown on Al Jazeera television.
Bret Baier, live for us at the Pentagon. Brett, thanks very much. Brett's going over to Fox News Radio, and he'll be back with us at the bottom of the hour for discussion of the rest of the day's headlines in the war in Iraq. First, waves of explosions in downtown Baghdad overnight, some of them near the city center. And there's a possibility the Iraqi Information Ministry was hit. Smoke could be seen drifting near that building. Greg Palcott's been monitoring developments. He's live in our newsroom in Amman, Jordan. Greg?
Hey, Shepard, it has been 1 week since bombs went over Baghdad, and once again, Baghdad in the gun sights. As you mentioned, 30 explosions heard in the last several hours in Baghdad, including the center of the city, including the area of the television center. That was the same target that was hit last night. That knocked Iraqi television off of the air temporarily. We've been looking at Iraqi satellite television, and that is off the air. We have no idea if the terrestrial channels are also off the air, and no clear fix on whether the Information Ministry was hit. Certainly there was smoke behind the Information Ministry. Other bombing, mostly on the outskirts of the city where the Republican Guard is believed to be grouping. Now, this followed explosions earlier on Wednesday in Baghdad, which left as many as 15 people dead, 30 injured. Happened around midday in a crowded area, buildings, cars destroyed. The U.S. says it was targeting Iraqi missiles and missile launchers placed around residential areas, and that the destruction could have been caused by a misguided Iraqi air defense missile. For its part, the Iraqi government says absolutely not. This is all America's fault. Finally, some images from up in northern Iraq around the city of Mosul. Armed tribesmen and Ba'ath Party members pledging to defend the regime of Saddam Hussein. They're getting their anti-aircraft and anti-tank guns ready. Interestingly enough, Shepard, we were up in the Mosul area about a month ago, and we watched some of these guys go through their paces. We didn't take them too seriously. Some of them were old. Some of them were out of shape. Some of their weapons looked out of shape. But these are the same kind of paramilitary types, these same kind of militia types that have been causing so much problems for Allied forces in the south. They could do the same in the north. That's the view from Amman. Back to you, Shep.
Greg Palcott live for us this early morning in Amman. Greg, thanks very much. Iraqis are swarming trucks that were bringing in much-needed food and water. You should have seen these scenes earlier today. In fact, we'll show you some video for it. They are hurting for food and water in the south, and it's not because of anything that the coalition forces have done. It's because, according to the Pentagon and other sources close to Basra, they have shut, the Iraqi government and the Iraqi troops have shut off the water, shut down the food lines, and have shut off much of the power. Their suffering, again, is because of their own people. They needed food and water. It was donated by the Kuwaiti government. It's the first sizable shipment of humanitarian aid to make it into that country. Jonathan Hunt's been monitoring details. He's live in Kuwait City with him. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Shep, yeah, this huge humanitarian aid effort which President Bush promised is now finally underway. And remember, it's important to remember that within a week of the war beginning, the humanitarian aid is now arriving. There was a short delay, part of it because of pockets of Iraqi resistance across the south, part of it because of the bad weather which rolled through this region over the last 48 hours. But the convoys are now rolling. One of the first of those reached the town of Safwan, that's just across the border from Kuwait. It was greeted pursued by hundreds of Iraqis, clearly desperate for the supplies on board. And as you can see from this, there were some fairly chaotic scenes there. Those white boxes contained a total of around 21,000 meals, bread, flour, tea and water. Another convoy has also rolled into the port city of Qasr. There are shiploads more, tons more aid, waiting to come off vessels which are anchored out in the Gulf, just waiting to dock at Qasr. Now that the British troops have secured that port, putting down the last of the Iraqi resistance there, aid will begin to flow to other places in Iraq, cities like Basra, for instance. First, though, Basra itself has to be secured, and a battle is still raging there. British troops are ringing the city. They're fighting regulars, but also around 1,000 militia. And British troops fighting there tell us that it's becoming more like a terrorist campaign than conventional warfare. Now, the fighting that is going on around Basra has caused some civilians to leave that city, partly for fear for their own safety, partly because they are coming further south in search of the aid that is now reaching the southern parts of Iraq. Meantime, coalition planes flying from their bases here in Kuwait have begun pounding a column of around 120 Iraqi tanks and armoured vehicles which have been headed out of Basra, heading south. Now, they seem to be using the sandstorms that have blown through as cover for that. It's not clear whether they're simply trying to get away from the fighting and facing the British troops there, or whether they are heading further south to try to attack coalition forces there. Either way, the air raids which have been underway should prevent them achieving either of those goals. That's the latest live from Kuwait City. Shep, back to you.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Just getting word that Rick Leventhal is working to make a connection with us right now, and while we hook that up, I want to let you know that the 4th LAR, the Marines' 4th, the 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Division, is working its way in there. You know, all their stuff was in the water on 30 to 40 ships. They weren't able to get in. They had hoped it would all come in from Turkey. Now it's coming in from the south. 4th Infantry Division. I said 4th LAR, didn't I? I think that's because Rick is with the 3rd LAR. At any rate, the 4th is coming in from the south eventually, and they'll be needed for backup. Our own Rick Leventhal has been embedded with the 1st Marine, 3rd LAR Battalion. Rick, good morning. What do you see?
It's a beautiful day, Shepard, for the first time in about, I don't know, 48 to 72 hours. The sun's shining, the wind is not howling, and you'd think that we'd be off and running, but we're not, because we've got an LAV just mired in the mud. We were driving last night after dark, and it was so dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And these guys do have night vision goggles, but they amplify or magnify the light that exists. And if there's no light, then they don't help much. So we were creeping along, and we almost drove into a ditch. We didn't. They backed off, but another LAV passed us and went right in there. And when we woke up this morning, we saw that he had almost flipped over. They towed him out. There's another one that's stuck, and the LAV trying to pull him out got stuck, and they hooked up a 3rd LAV to pull those 2 out, and he got stuck. So now we actually have 4 LAVs in a line, all tied together with tow lines, trying to pull each other out of this mud pit.
4 what's, Rick?
LAVs, light armored vehicles.
Light armored vehicles.
One of them is a LAV-R, which stands for recovery. It has a crane on it and a winch. And that was the one that was able to pull the one that had been stuck, almost flipped over, out. But now it's just it's become a bigger mess than we imagined.
What do you hear about contact with the enemy in or around you, north or south?
Well, north of us, we hear that the contact is continuing. Sporadic gunfights as the Marines move to the north. Last evening, before dark, we passed through what had been a battlefield for the past couple of days and saw a lot of stuff we haven't seen yet. We saw 30 to 40 EPWs, enemy prisoners of war, in a pen lined with the barbed wire, the concertina wire, being guarded by Marines. We saw our first Iraqi casualties, a couple of soldiers killed, lying face down in the dirt at the side of the road. And we saw a lot of abandoned munitions, including rocket-propelled grenade launchers and grenades, and boxes and boxes of mortars and mortar shells just littering the side of the road where the Iraqis had, I guess, dropped them and fled when the forces advanced. We also saw some buildings that have been heavily damaged. And this road is apparently just crawling with Iraqis who have put up pretty stiff resistance. The push north continues, though, and they're, I think, making more progress now than they had been over the past couple of days.
I want to show folks who weren't with us earlier tonight for the Fox Report what it is you're talking about when you mention those sandstorms and all the mud that has come after. Do we have that tape? Why don't we roll that tape?
It's Tuesday, March 25th, about 3:30 in the afternoon. We're in the middle of the worst sandstorm that we've ever seen. It's gotten progressively worse throughout the day. Early this morning, it was blowing a little bit. Visibility was several hundred meters. Then it got down to maybe 100 meters, then maybe 50, and then 20, and now it's just you can only see about a few feet in front of your face. The wind is gusting well over 50 miles an hour, perhaps 60, 70 miles per hour. The conditions are just awful. It's like you're taking a bath in dirt out here. They were firing mortars earlier today, but we haven't heard any in a while, and it's easy to understand why. You cannot see anything out here, but perhaps more incredible than the weather is the fact that a Marine can actually sleep through this. That's Carlucci down there. That sandstorm reached hurricane-force winds, and it created quite a mess for us, especially after it turned into a thunderstorm later on. These are our kits here, and you can see they're pretty dirty. Everybody got dirty last night. We spent much of this morning cleaning up, and the weather actually improved. It looked like it was going to be a decent day, but as you can see now, it appears the sandstorms have returned, so the operational pause on the ground may last a little bit longer.
That from during the day? That from during the day on Wednesday and before, I guess, was the night before in the sandstorm. Rick, we could see you there. Why can't we see you now? Don't you have a video phone?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but the vehicle that we're on doesn't have an inverter that we could use to power the video phone portion of our satellite phone. So that is riding with another vehicle in the supply train, or the vehicles that follow behind to resupply us with food and water, etc. Dusty the engineers back there with a satellite dish as well. But because of our mission and because of what they do and what we do, they can't ride with us, and there's no room in our vehicle for all that equipment and for him. So we have to ride separately. Whenever we get a chance, we link up with him and we feed tape and we go live with the dish. But without the power, we can't do the live shots, and it's been frustrating for me because there's so much to show, but we just don't have the ability to do it. So the phone calls are the best I can do it in most cases.
Rick, we keep hearing about how this Battle of Baghdad and the fact that it's coming and the fact that they're working to secure the cities to the south of you there, and that this thing could become urban warfare and all the rest. Is that talked about when you guys stop to camp or whatever it is?
We haven't discussed that specifically, but I think what has been discussed is that I don't think people here expect that the resistance will last much longer. I think that if the military makes the progress that it hopes to make up north, then I think that the people down south will fall in line. I don't think you're going to see what you saw in Afghanistan, for example. I think that you'll probably see people lay down their weapons and say, okay, time to stop fighting. We've got a new boss in town.
Sounds like a good plan. Rick Leventhal, be safe. Tell the folks hello.
I will do
proud
that.
of them.
I will do that too. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
And by the way, I think they're making progress getting this LAV out now. It looks like this train of vehicles towed together is now starting to get itself unstuck.
That light armored vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah, the light armored vehicle. Rick Leventhal has become
right.
one of them.
And it is a battalion, not a division.
Okay, touche. Rick, see you soon, I hope. Coming up, Central Command showing us how good their technology how well their technology can work. Watch this. Under the bridge. Bridge is fine. Tank is gone. All of that, plus we'll discuss this article in the Washington Post online, which says that this war could last months. Didn't say anybody said it would be fast. Just said that that's the reporting on the front page of the Washington Post. We'll discuss the reasons for that reporting and all the rest for you coming up live on Fox.
This program is brought to you by Hummer. Check out the new H2 at Hummer.com.
Excuse me. I think this fish is still alive.
Excuse me.
You have trouble sleeping when you're away from home, don't you? And you've tried everything at those hotels, using extra pillows, raiding the minibar, wearing one of those black eye masks. Nothing works. But have you tried saving money? You'd be surprised how restful getting a great price at a nice hotel can feel. For example,
check out additional hotel savings during our spring break sale.
So you can sleep soundly and save money doing it. Travelocity. Call or see site for details.
Minutes past 7 a.m. in Baghdad on what Rick Leventhal described as a beautiful day. You may be able to see some clouds in the distance. Looks a bit like smoke, but I'm told it's clouds nonetheless. The bombings over Baghdad have continued. The early morning hours will see much more of the same to the south and east of the city. The bombing raids are said to continue to the north in the region called Erbil. Explosions seen tonight. Bombs over Baghdad, as Fox reports this hour. British Prime Minister Tony Blair meeting with President Bush at Camp David tonight. This ahead of the Prime Minister's get-together in New York City tomorrow with the UN's Kofi Annan. White House correspondent Wendell Goler live on the North Lawn with details now. Wendell?
Shepard, logic would make the Camp David summit a council of war, but Prime Minister Blair says he's actually here as a peacemaker. He's looking for a way to get the U.S. and Europe to work together again as partners instead of rivals. And with the Washington Post, as you point out, saying experts are predicting the war could go on for months, the President and Prime Minister are actually looking beyond the war to Iraq's rebuilding. Prime Minister Blair once again trying to make peace on the United Nations Security Council. The same council members the U.S. and U.K. bumped heads with earlier this month now don't want to authorize a UN role in rebuilding Iraq because they feel that would legitimize the war they opposed. Once again, France is leading the way, which made for some entertaining comments at a House committee hearing today.
I share with Mr. Rogers my concern about money for Turkey. I think that'll be a hard sell, but I can understand. Is there any money in there for France?
No.
I just wondered.
President began the day with a briefing on the progress of the war at MacDill Air Base near Tampa. It's the home of the Central Command where the battle plans were drawn up. And Mr. Bush was linked by video phone with General Tommy Franks, who was directing the fight from the Persian Gulf. Later, he had lunch with the troops, told them coalition forces are making great progress in Iraq, but said the war is far from over, and Saddam Hussein's launching the most desperate elements of his army, waiting for the troops as they close in on Baghdad. The President aimed to raise the morale of the airmen and women and to boost the resolve of the American people by asserting once again the fight over there is part of the war against terror here.
We will not wait to meet this danger with firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our own cities. Instead, we are meeting the danger today with our Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Marines.
Even though the president says the war is far from over, his aides say coalition forces are actually ahead of schedule, which makes post-war planning quite important. Prime Minister Blair trying to get the U.S. to give the UN a bigger role in post-war Iraq than it really wants, trying to get France, Germany, and Russia to swallow their pride about a war they couldn't prevent, and which the U.S., at least in part, blames on their refusal to enforce the UN Security Council resolutions. He and the president will hold meetings tomorrow before and after an 11 o'clock news conference that Fox News Channel will carry live. Shepard?
Wendell Goler live at the White House, where they've clearly turned the lights off for the evening. Good call. Wendell, thank you. Imagine the sight in the skies, if you can. For the first time in decades, 1,000 troops dropping into Iraq, opening up the northern front on Saddam Hussein. For the first time, that many, the first time in decades. Here with more on that mobilization and what it may mean to the war effort ahead, Martin Strong, retired Navy SEAL and veteran of some 30 special ops missions. Great to see you again. Thanks.
Hi, Shep.
Talk about improvising a northern front. They figured it out pretty darn quick, didn't they?
Well, I think General Franks was going to use his airborne troops and the Rangers as kind of a floating reserve that he could apply anywhere on the battlefield, and the Turks changed the schedule a little bit, so now they're probably going to be split between the reserve duty to be applied on the Battle of Baghdad and establishing that northern front.
How difficult is it to get 1,000 paratroopers into a hostile territory?
Well, as long as there aren't people on the ground shooting up at you like in, say, Panama or in World War II, it's the same problems you would run in if you were trying to jump at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning in the United States. It's jumping out of the plane and trying to get everybody together on the ground and get a head count.
Some people are writing saying, well, how do they get their stuff? How do they have the tools that they need?
Well, when you do a combat jump, you're going to have your equipment suspended right across your knees, and about 20 feet above the ground, you release a quick release, which deploys that gear below you about 15 feet on a tether. It'll hit the ground first, and then you'll hit the ground a little bit distance from it, so it's attached to you. This is
CENTCOM video, and this is from the 25th, so it's not what happened today, but it certainly gives a relatively good idea of what it was like. I'm guessing that this large a drop has to be practiced pretty often, yes?
It does. It's a little bit of choreographed madness, especially at night. But when I first went through airborne school, and to get my first 5 jumps to qualify before going to a SEAL team, we had to do night jumps as the very prerequisite to get those jump wings. So these paratroopers have been doing this for a long time.
101st.
101st, 82nd, all the special ops guys, they're all capable of doing what you just saw.
And they're all going to move from the north to the south and be part of this circle around Baghdad, I suppose?
Well, I would guess they're going to augment that 70,000-man Kurdish army and put pressure and maybe cause Saddam to shift some forces towards the northern front. I'd still be watching for the rest of the airborne and Ranger forces to be used as a mobile reserve when General Franks sees what the deployment is of these Iraqi divisions in the south.
Do you ever look at the situation with the Kurds and the Turks and think, man, this could get messy?
It could get messy. I don't think the Kurds are going to do this when we're around, not during the early phases, but if we put some, another government, Iraqi government of dissidents or temporary UN observation in charge of Iraq, you could see some problems maybe 6-7 months after that.
When you see an operation dropping in like this, knowing that there was supposed to be a northern front, do you have concerns, or do you say, well, this was the second plan and we're on plan?
Well, this was probably a plan for any front that they needed to throw in there using airborne troops. I think the fact that we couldn't bring the mechanized infantry through Turkey forced our hand in committing some of the airborne troops to a northern front. But I believe that General Franks had this in his back pocket from the very beginning. You haven't heard from the Rangers and the airborne forces all through this so far, and I think he's going to throw them where they're best going to be used.
Indeed. Once a Navy SEAL, always a Navy SEAL. Martin Strong with us. Good to see you, Martin.
Thanks, Shep.
All right, coming up, hungry and thirsty Iraqis swarming trucks carrying food and water, courtesy of the Kuwaiti government. The commander-in-chief saying the day of reckoning for Saddam Hussein's regime is near. The president visiting the U.S. Central Command near Tampa, Florida. Pictures from the front lines, fighting the elements as they fight the enemy. Would you look at that picture? A mean Marine dealing with a severe sandstorm at Camp Viper in the Iraqi desert. More on Operation Iraqi Freedom and details of this report from WashingtonPost.com. Months for the war. Who's exactly surprised by this? Who said it was going to be quick? And why might it take months? Analysis and your emails as Fox reports this hour.
It was not my dream to realize this day. The day a father watched his daughter start at Juilliard. But I embraced that dream with unwavering attention and made it my own, because that was the dream of my client.